The following contest is a hardcore match. On the way to the ring, from New York, the Hero.
Spiderman does whatever a spider can. Spins a web, sweet surprise. Catches thieves just like flies. Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man.
And the opponent,
I just feel so sad.
from Atlanta, Georgia,
You miss your daddy.
the
Let me
player.
see you. Throw your hands up in the air and wave around like I just don't care. Ooh. This is your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. Your granddaddy. Your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. Woo! I want y'all to keep it right there. Help me say it. Come on. Granddaddy. I miss my.
Thank you for watching Fantasy Celebrity Wrestling Season 3, Episode 11. This, of course, round 2 of our championship tournament. Mr. Brown versus Spider-Man. Mr. Brown opening up the match, taking care of Spider-Man. Mr. Brown kicks Spider-Man out of the ring, now taunting Spider-Man. Spider-Man gets up. Spider-Man re-enters the ring. Mr. Brown kicks Spider-Man right back out of the ring. Mr. Brown now doing what Mr. Brown does, taunting Spider-Man. Another taunt. Spider-Man not sure what to think. As you recall, Spider-Man won the first round, defeating Mr. Clean. Both men in the ring again. Mr. Brown with a bulldog on Spider-Man. Spider-Man with a left. Mr. Brown with a couple of rights and a spinning kick takes Spider-Man down. Spider-Man with a right. Spider-Man with Mr. Brown on the ropes. Spider-Man. Spider-Man in control of the match now. Spider-Man with a kick to the midsection. An elbow to the midsection. Another kick to the midsection. Spider-Man going outside the ring. Coming back in the ring. Mr. Brown on the offensive now. Mr. Brown with several kicks. Just punched Spider-Man over the top rope. Mr. Brown again taunting Spider-Man. Mr. Brown breakdancing in the middle of the ring. Bad Leroy Brown. Spider-Man now. Spider-Man just brought a steel folding chair into the ring. Mr. Brown takes it away and nails Spider-Man in the skull. Spider-Man now with the chair. Mr. Brown now with the chair. Again Spider-Man. Again Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown just nailed Spider-Man with that steel folding chair. Mr. Brown again breakdancing. Spider-Man's got the chair. Mr. Brown should watch out. But Mr. Brown takes Spider-Man down. Now Mr. Brown with the chair levels Spider-Man. Mr. Brown with a headlock on Spider-Man. Now a chicken wing. And Mr. Brown with a bulldog. More breakdancing by Mr. Brown. Spider-Man up to his feet. Takes advantage of Mr. Brown not paying attention. Spider-Man takes down Mr. Brown. Spider-Man with a low blow. Spider-Man exiting the ring, picks up a sledgehammer, brings it in the ring, and just levels Mr. Brown with that sledgehammer. Mr. Brown taking the sledgehammer. Now Spider-Man. Now Mr. Brown. Spider-Man wisely stepping outside the ring. Spider-Man looking for that piece of lumber wrapped with barbed wire. Both men at a standoff. Spider-Man enters the ring, but Mr. Brown attacks first with the sledgehammer. Mr. Brown takes Spider-Man down hard. Mr. Brown now with the wood, driving those barbed wire spikes into Spider-Man. Mr. Brown, more break dancing, taunting Spider-Man. Spider-Man enters the ring with a steel folding chair, but Mr. Brown takes the chair away and just crushes Spider-Man in the face. Mr. Brown on the offensive, taking the chair to Spider-Man. Spider-Man takes the chair away from Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown regains control of the chair and uses it to his advantage. Mr. Brown now with the scissors kick, and there it is. There's no way Spider-Man's getting up from that. Mr. Brown now with a submission move. Mr. Brown releases the hold. Mr. Brown with the rock bottom. And it's over. Mr. Brown now with the cover. 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Brown advances.